Assessment of learning, for learning, and arts learning. The first question of this session is which of the following best describes assessment for learning? Option: summative evaluation at the end of the course, ongoing feedback to improve student learning, standardized testing for college admission, grading students based on a curve. Answer of this question is option B, that is ongoing feedback to improve student learning. Next, in the context of assessment, what does the term reliability primarily refers to? Option: the accuracy of the assessment, the consistency of the assessment result, the difficulty level of assessment, the relevance of the assessment to the curriculum. Answer of this question is option B, that is the consistency of the assessment results. Which assessment approach is most closely aligned with the concept of assessment as learning? Option: teacher led summative test, peer grading exercises, self reflection and metacognition, standardized national exams. Answer of this question is option C, that is self reflection and metacognition. What is the primary purpose of formative assessment? Option: to rank students within a class, to provide final grades for report cards, to inform and improve instruction and learning, to evaluate teachers' performance. Answer of this question is option C, that is to inform and improve instruction and learning. Which of the following is not typically considered a characteristic of effective feedback in assessment? Option: timely, specific, action oriented, comparative to other students' performance. Answer of this question is option D, that is comparative to other students' performance. In Bloom's revised taxonomy, which cognitive level is considered the highest? Option: analyzing, evaluating, creating, and applying. Answer of this question is option C, that is creating. What is the main difference between norm referenced and criterion referenced assessments? Option: the type of questions used, the scoring method, the type time allowed for completion, the age group of test takers. Answer of this question is option B, that is the scoring method. Which assessment technique is most suitable for measuring a student's ability to apply knowledge in real world situations? Option: multiple choice test, true false quizzes, performance based assessment, fill in the blank exercises. Answer of this question is option C, that is performance based assessment. What does the term authentic assessment primarily emphasize? Option: using only standardized tests, assessing student in real world context, focusing solely on factual recall, comparing students against each other. Answer of this question is option B, that is assessing student in real world context. Which of the following is a key principle of assessment as learning? Option: focusing on summative evaluation, encouraging student self-assessment, emphasizing competition among students, relying solely on teacher judgment. Answer of this question is option B, that is encouraging student self-assessment. What is the primary purpose of diagnostic assessment? Option: to determine final grades, to identify student prior knowledge and misconceptions, to rank students within a class, to evaluate curriculum effectiveness. Answer of this question is option B, that is to identify student prior knowledge and misconception. Which assessment method is most likely to promote deep learning? Option: weekly multiple choice quizzes, end of year standardized test, project based assessment with ongoing feedback, timed essay exams. Answer of this question is option C, that is project based assessment with ongoing feedback. What is the main goal of assessment for learning? Option: to provide final grades for report cards, to compare students' performance against national standards, to support and enhance the learning process, to evaluate teachers' effectiveness. Answer of this question is option C, that is to support and enhance the learning process. Which of the following is not typically considered a formative assessment technique? Option: exit ticket, peer feedback sessions, final exams, think fairs activities. Answer of this question is option C, that is final exams. What does the concept of assessment literacy primarily refers to? Option: the ability to read assessment questions accurately, understanding how to create and use assessment effectively, proficiency in taking standardized tests, knowledge of assessment terminology. Answer of this question is option B, that is understanding how to create and use assessment effectively. Which of the following best describes the purpose of rubrics in assessment? Option: to standardize test questions across different subjects, to provide clear criteria for evaluating performance, to rank students within a class, to reduce the time needed for grading. Answer of this question is option B, that is to provide clear criteria for evaluating performance. Next, what is the primary focus of if-stative assessment? Option: comparing a student performance to their own previous performance, evaluating student based on standardized norm, assessing group projects, measuring teacher effectiveness. Answer of this question is option A, that is comparing a student performance to their own previous performance. Which assessment approach is most closely aligned with a growth mindset? Option: high stake testing, norm reference grading, formative assessment with descriptive feedback, pass fail grading system. Answer of this question is option C, that is formative assessment with descriptive feedback. Next, which is the main purpose of portfolio assessment? Option: to provide a single comprehensive test score, to showcase student growth and achievement over time, to compare students against each other, to evaluate teacher performance. Answer of this question is option B, that is to showcase student growth and achievement over time. Which of the following is a key characteristic of effective learning objectives in assessment? Option: they are vague and often to interpretation. They focus solely on factual recall. They are measurable and observable. They are the same for all students regardless of ability. Answer of this question is option C, that is they are measurable and observable. Which assessment approach is most likely to promote metacognition in students? Option: standardized testing, self-assessment and reflection, multiple choice quizzes, time essays. Timed essays. Answer of this question is option B, that is self-assessment and reflection. What is the primary purpose of a learning progression in assessment? Option: to rank students against each other, to map out the sequence of skills and concepts in a subject, to determine final grades, to evaluate each teacher performance. Answer of this question is option B, that is to map out the sequence of skills and concepts in a subject. Which of the following is a key characteristic of formative assessment? Option: it occurs at the end of a unit or courses. It is used to assign final grades. It provides ongoing feedback during the learning process. It is always in the form of a written test. Answer of this question is option C, that is it provides ongoing feedback during the learning process. What does the term construct validity refers to in assessment? Option: the consistency of test score, the extent to which a test measure what it claimed to measure, the difficulty level of test items, the fairness of the grading system. Answer of this question is option B, that is the extent to which a test measures what it claims to measure. Which assessment technique is most suitable for evaluating students' problem solving skills? Option: true false quizzes, multiple choice test, case studies and scenarios, matching exercises. Answer of this question is option C, that is case studies and scenarios. What is the main purpose of criterion reference assessment? Option: to compare student performance to a predefined standard, to rank student within a class, to evaluate teachers' effectiveness, to provide feedback on learning style. Answer of this question is option A, that is to compare student performance to a predefined standard. Next, which of the following is not typically considered a benefit of peer assessment? Option: I think answer of this question is already out. That is providing summative grades. What is the primary focus of assessment as learning? uh, Options: teachers evaluation of student work, student self monitoring and metacognition, standardized testing, grading based on a curve. Answer of this question is option B, that is student self monitoring and metacognitions. As we know, the concept of assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning. In assessment of learning, we are assessing what a child already learned. Assessment for learning, in assessment for learning, we are assessing a child to learn, and in assessment as learning, we are here assessing or a child or a student himself or herself, here assessing his progress, his achievement or her achievement. And so it's also called self monitoring and metacognition. Next, which assessment method is most likely to provide insight into student thought process? Option: multiple choice test, think aloud protocols, time essays, true false quizzes. Here, the answer of this question is option B, that is think aloud protocol. This is the type of assessment which most likely provide insight into students' thought process, because here the students need to think himself about his or her achievement, about his or her progress. So the answer of this question is option B, that is think aloud protocol. What is the main purpose of a rubric in assessment? Option: to rank student against each other, to provide clear criteria for evaluation, to determine the difficulty of test item, to measure teacher effectiveness. Answer of this question is option B, that is to provide a clear criteria for evaluations. As we know, rubrics is not a assessment technique. It is a scoring technique or scoring tool through which we score the student's achievement by observing him or her. Next, which of the following is a key principle of universal design for learning in assessment? Option: learning a single assessment method for all students, providing multiple means of engaging and expression, focusing solely on standardized testing, grading all students on the same curve. And answer of this question is option B, that is providing multiple means of engagement and expression. What is the primary purpose of summative assessment? Option: to provide ongoing feedback during learning, to evaluate learning at the end of the instructional process or period, to identify student prior knowledge, to promote self-reflection in students. Answer of this question is option B, that is to evaluate learning at the end of an instructional period. As we already discussed the type of assessment in our previous videos, that assess summative assessment, formative assessment, diagnostic assessment, for placement assessment, as well as evaluative assessment. In summative assessment, we are assessing to what extent, to what degree a child achieve or learn the prefix learning objective. In formative assessment, we are assessing the child during the process of instruction, to provide feedback as well as to change the teacher instructional process and method of teaching. In placement evaluation, placement assessment, we assessing childs to give a place, to provide a space, to give admission, take admission. And in diagnostic assessment, we are diagnosing a problem, a issue, as well as we are diagnosing the factor behind high achievement also. And in effective assessment, we are comparing a student previous performance with the current performance. Next question of this session is, which assessment approach is most closely aligned with the concept of assessment for learning? It is a formative assessment which we already discussed in our previous videos. What does the term was-spec effect refers to in assessment? This is one of the important concepts of assessment. Option of this question is the impact of assessment on teaching and learning, the reliability of test score, the difficulty level of test score item, the fairness of grading systems. Wasbeck effect means the impact of assessment on teaching learning process. It means you can say the assessment for learning. Wasbeck effect is which can be comparable with assessment for learning, because in assessment for learning we are assessing the child for to learn, and in WASPEC effect we are observing the impact of assessment on the student teaching and learning process. Next, which of the following is not typically considered a characteristic of effective learning objective? Option: specific, measurable, time bound, ambiguous. Answer of this question is option D, that is ambiguous. What is the main purpose of diagnostic assessment? Option: to assess final grade, to identify student strength and weakness, to rank student within a class, to evaluate curriculum effectiveness. Answer of this question is option B, that is to identify student strength and weakness. Which assessment method is most suitable for evaluating student ability to synthesize the information from multiple sources? Option: multiple choice test, true false quizzes, research paper and projects, fill in the blanks exercises. Answer of this question is option C, that is a research paper and projects. Which of the which is the primary focus of assessment of learning? Option: ongoing feedback to improve learning, student self-reflection and metacognition, evaluating learning outcomes at the end of the instruction, identifying students' prior knowledge. Answer of this question is option C, that is evaluating learning outcomes at the end of the instruction. Which of the following is a key characteristic of authentic assessment? Option: it focuses solely on factual recall, it mimics real world tasks and context, it relies exclusively on multiple choice questions, it emphasizes competition among students. Answer of this question is option B, that is it mimics real world tasks and context. What is the main purpose of formative feedback? Option for this question is to assign grades, to rank students, to improve learning performance, to evaluate teacher effectiveness. Answer of this question is option C, that is to improve learning and performance. Which assessment approach is most likely to promote student autonomy in learning? Option: teacher directed summative test, standardized national exams, self assessment and goal setting, norm reference grading. Answer of this question is option C, that is self assessment and goal setting. What is the term assessment literacy primarily refers to for teachers? Option: the ability to read assessment questions accurately, understanding how to create, administer, and interpret assessment, proficiency in taking standardized tests, knowing knowledge of assessment terminology. Answer of this question is option B, that is understanding how to create, administer, and interpret assessments. Which of the following is not typically considered a formative assessment strategy? Option: exit tickets, peer feedback, final exams, concept mapping. Answer of this question is option C, that is final exams. What is the main purpose of portfolio assessment? Option: to provide a single comprehensive test score, to showcase student growth and achievement over time, to compare students against each other, to evaluate curriculum effectiveness. Answer of this question is option B, that is to showcase student growth and achievement over time. Which assessment method is most suitable for evaluating student particular skill in a laboratory setting? Option: written exam, oral exams, performance-based assessment, multiple choice test. Answer of this question is option C, that is performance-based assessment. What is the primary focus of assessment as learning? Option: teachers' evaluation of student work, student self-monitoring and I think we already discussed these questions. The answer of this question is option B, that is student self-monitoring and metacognition. Principle of effective feedback. It should be timely and specific. Yes, feedback should be timely and specific, because if you are not providing we are not providing timely and specific feedback to students, then it may be ineffective. So we need to provide feedback in time as well as specifically. What is the main purpose of using Bloom's taxonomy in assessment? This is a very good question. Option: to categorize student based on ability, to design questions that target different cognitive levels, to determine the length of assessment, to evaluate teacher performance. Answer of this question is option B, that is to design questions and target different cognitive levels. Which assessment approach is most closely aligned with growth mindset? Answer of this question is option C, that is formative assessment with descriptive feedback. What is the primary purpose of using rubrics in assessment? The main or primary purpose of rubrics, which is using in our teaching learning process or in assessing assessment process, is to provide clear criteria for evaluating performance. Which of the following is not typically considered a benefit of self-assessment? Providing summative grade. This is not a benefit of self-assessment. But other than this, the other three options, that is promoting metacognition, this is also an objective of self-assessment, enhances student motivation. Yes, it is obviously this is also an objective of self-assessment, as well as developing critical thinking. This is also and very crucial a benefit of self-assessment. Next, what is the main difference between reliability and validity in assessment? Option: reliability focuses on consistency, while validity focuses on accuracy. Reliability is about fairness, while validity is about difficulty. Reliability is focus for formative assessment, while validity is for summative assessment. Reliability is qualitative, while validity is quantitative. Reliability focus on consistency, while validity focus on accuracy. Answer of this question is option A, that is reliability always focus on consistency, whereas validity focus on accuracy. And about validity reliability, we already discussed in our previous video, when we are discussed different questions from reliability, validity, and objectivity of a test. Which assessment method is most suitable for evaluating students' ability to apply knowledge in unfamiliar context? Answer of this question is option C, that is transfer task scenario based question. What is the primary purpose of norm reference assessment? To rank students relative to their fear. This is we already discussed in our previous videos also. Which of the following is a key characteristic of effective learning objective? They are measurable and observable. This is one of the most important or crucial characteristic of effective learning objective. What is the main purpose of diagnostic assessment? The main purpose of diagnostic assessment, as we already discussed, that to identify students' prior knowledge and misconception, as well as student weakness and strength. Which assessment approach is most likely to promote deep learning? Answer of this question is option C, that is project-based assessment with ongoing feedback. What is the primary focus of if-stative assessment? As we already discussed, that if-stative assessment means comparing a student performance to their own previous performance. Which of the following is not typically considered a characteristic of summative assessment? Option C, that is it provides ongoing feedback during the learning process. This is the answer of this question. What is the main purpose of using assessment data to inform instruction? Answer of this question is option B, that is to adjust teaching strategy based on student need. What is the primary purpose of formative assessment? Yes, this question we repeatedly discussed in our previous sections as well as in previous videos also. Which of the following is a key principle of universal design of learning? We also discussed these questions. What is the main purpose of using learning progression in assessment? Yes, this is a very important questions. These questions, I think, in some exams we already asked. So the answer of this question is to map out the sequence of skill and concept in the subjects. Which assessment approach is most closely aligned with the concept of assessment for learning? Yes, it is a affirmative assessment. What is the terms construct irrelevance refers to in assessment? The inclusion of factors that are not related to what is being measured, that are called construct irrelevance. Which of the following is not typically considered a benefit of peer assessment, providing summative grades? Which is the primary focus of assessment as learning? Best self monitoring and metacognition. Which assessment method is most likely to provide insight into student problem solving strategy? Think aloud protocol. This is already we discussed. What is the main purpose of focusing Bloom's taxonomy? This is already we discussed, that to create questions that target different cognitive level. Which of the following is a key characteristic of effective feedback in assessment? It should be actionable and specific. What is the primary purpose of using rubrics in project-based assessment? It answer is to reduce the time needed for grading. Next, what is the primary purpose of using project-based assessment? To provide clear criteria for evaluating performance. This is the answer of this question. Which assessment approach is most likely to promote student autonomy in learning? Answer of this question is option C, that is self-assessment and goal setting. What does the term assessment literacy primarily refers for the student? Option: the ability to read assessment questions accurately, understand how to interpret and use feedback for improvement, proficiency in taking standardized tests, knowledge of assessment terminology. Answer of this question is option B, that is understanding how to interpret and use feedback for improvement. Which of the following is not typically uh, considered a formative assessment strategy? Option: exit ticket. I think this is already we discussed. The answer of this question is option C, that is standardized one of test. What is the main purpose of concept map in assessment? Option: to rank students against each other, to visualize relationships between the ideas and students, to determine final grade, to evaluate teacher performance. Answer of this question is option B, that is to visualize relationships between ideas and concept. Which assessment method is most suitable for evaluating students' ability to defend an argument? Option of this question is of multiple choice questions, true false questions, debate or oral presentation, fill in the blank exercises. Answer of this question is option C, that is debate or oral presentation. What is the primary focus of dynamic assessment? Answer of this question is option of this question is measuring student performance at a single point in time, evaluating the process of learning and potential for improvement, comparing student to national standard, assessing teacher effectiveness. Answer of this question is option B, that is evaluating the process of learning and potential for improvement. Which of the following is a key principle of culturally responsive assessment? Option: using only standardized tests, ignoring cultural differences in classroom, considering the diverse cultural background in assessment design, assessing all students in the same way regardless of background. Answer of this question is option C, that is considering diverse cultural background in assessment design. What is the main purpose of using technology in assessment? Option: to replace traditional assessment method entirely, to enhance efficiency and provide immediate feedback, to make assessment more difficult for student, to reduce the role of teacher in the assessment process. Answer of this question is option B, that is to enhance efficiency and provide immediate feedback. Which assessment approach is most closely aligned with the concept of assessment as learning? This question we already discussed several times. The answer of this question is option C, that is self-reflections, metacognition. This is the key word of this type of assessment. What does the term assessment for learning primarily emphasize? This question also you already discussed several times. The answer of this question is option B, that is using assessment to inform and improve teaching and learning. So you always remember you have to interlink the assessment for learning and formative assessment always, and like which you have to choose the answer from the distractor. Next, which of the following is not typically considered a characteristic of authentic assessment? This question also already we discussed. Answer of this question is option B, that is multiple choice questions. A multiple choice question is not a characteristic of authentic assessment because here it is completely objective in nature. If we want to know the authentic assessment, then we have to see the subjective aspect always as well as the practicability of the students, like a real world task, what he or she is really doing in its practical life. Next, performance based evaluation. What kind of performance he or she is showing, we have to see that, we have to observe that, and accordingly we have to grade, or accordingly we have to assess that students. As well as integration of skills, not only we have to measure the knowledge or informations of students, but also we have to see the skill, the uses of that acquired skills, to what extent he or she is using, how efficiently he or she is using. These are the concept, these are the things uh, we need to measure this aspect. So in authentic assessment, multiple choice questions, this is not a characteristic of authentic assessment because it is completely objective, and in authentic assessment we have to proactive for subjective assessment always, as well as performance based assessment. Next, what is the main purpose of using portfolio in assessment? Option: to provide a single comprehensive test score, to showcase student growth and achievement over time, to compare students against each other, to evaluate curriculum effectiveness. Answer of this question is option B, that is to showcase student growth and achievement over time. Which assessment method is most suitable for evaluating student ability to work collaboratively? Option: individual written test, oral presentation, group project with peer evaluation, multiple choice quizzes. Answer of this question is option C, that is a group project with peer evaluation. What is the primary purpose of criterion reference assessment? We already discussed several times uh, questions related to criterion reference assessment. So the answer of this question is option A, that is to compare student performance in the predefined standards. As we already discussed that norm reference and criterion reference test, two categories of test. In norm reference test, we are comparing a student score or achievement with its reference group, or with its norms, or with its peers, or with a school, or with a state. But in a criterion reference assessment, we are comparing students' achievement with a predefined or predetermined criteria, like 50%, 60%, 30% pass, fail. These are the criteria. We are comparing a student performance with this predefined criteria, and we are judging a student or assessing a student. Which of the following is a key characteristic of effective learning objective in assessment? Option: they are vague and often to interpretations. They focus solely on factual recall. They are measurable and aligned with curriculum standard. They are same for all students regardless of ability. Answer of this question is option C, that is they are measurable and aligned with curriculum. Next, what is the main purpose of using rubrics in performance-based assessment? Option of this question is to standardize performances across different subjects, to provide clear criteria for evaluating complex tasks, to rank students within a class, to reduce the time needed for grade. Answer of this question is option B, that is to provide clear criteria for evaluating complex tasks. Which assessment approach is most likely to promote metacognitions in students? Option of this question is standardized testing, self-assessment and reflections journal, multiple choice quizzes, timed essay. Answer of this question is option B, that is self-assessment and reflections journal. Next, what is the primary focus of embedded embedded assessment? Option: separate stand-alone test, assessment integrated into regular learning activities, end of year examinations, standardized national test. Answer of this question is option B, that is assessment integration into regular learning activities. Which of the following is not typically considered a benefit of formative assessment? Answer of this question is option C, that is assessing final grade. This is not a benefit of formative assessment. This is a benefit of summative assessment. while providing ongoing feedbacks, identifying the learning gap, as well as adjusting instructional or teaching learning methods, and these are the objective of formative assessment, but assessing final grade, this is not an objective of formative assessment. Next, what is the main purpose of using Bloom taxonomy in assessment? We already discussed several times to create questions which targets different cognitive level. This is the main purpose behind the Bloom's taxonomy. Which assessment method is most suitable for evaluating students' ability to synthesize information multiple sources? Answer of this question is option C, that is a research paper and project. This is already discussed. Next, what is the primary focus of diagnostic assessment? Identifying student prior knowledge and misconception. This is already discussed. I think these questions we already discussed, and I when I prepared it repeated.